Hi all, I'm Daniel, co-creator of Bear Stories. I have a special story for you today. I found it so deep that I felt like I have to do whatever to do it justice. Hence, no cheery background music or fancy art, just me, you, and this upsetting story. Warning, graphic content described. Read at your own discretion. This has recently came to my attention through a family gathering, but it happened over 20 years ago. I live in good old sunny Portugal, in the Algarve to be more precise, and in the summertime we do what we do best, which is spend entire days at the beach with our families. At the time I was 16 and my brother was 4, and we had a friendly neighbor family, which was basically our second family, and they had 2 daughters, aged 12 and 6. Maria and Rita, not the real names obviously. Now, we basically spend every waking moment together, since we literally live a few meters from each other, and our parents were pretty much inseparable and would spend their own time together, since my dad was a fisherman, still is, and the girl's dad was also a fisherman. Our mothers would do what mothers do together, cook, gossip, and whatnot. I was only 1 year old when we moved to the neighborhood, and a few days later the other family moved in, and since we were literally the very first people to move to that neighborhood. It was a brand spanking new community, still with half the brand new houses for sale. My parents befriended them very quickly. 4 years later their first daughter was born, and I suddenly had a very loud and very active playfriend as she grew up. Despite our age difference, we actually got along just fine, and over the years we grew closer and closer, and with our siblings being born, we were as brother and sister as they come. Like I said before, summer days were spent in the beach, and this is where it all began. One day, mid-afternoon, we were all at the beach playing as usual, when he came to us and asked us if we had seen Rita, since she was nowhere to be found. We said we hadn't seen her, and the last time we saw her she was playing with some children, right next to our tower spot. Her dad was frantically looking for her, and my dad was looking worried too. The next hour was spent looking for Rita, while Maria was already crying because her sister was missing. My heart was pounding because this has never happened before, and they were both like my own sisters. Finally, after almost 90 minutes searching, she had made her way towards us, and said she was playing with a few kids behind some rocks in the distance. This particular beach we were at was amazing, and at high tide it was a swim paradise, but at a low tide all the huge rocks and boulders formed by the tides were visible and were awesome for some hide and seek opportunities. No second thought was given, and we all went home. Later that night, Rita's dad came to her home in tears and extremely furious. Turns out, Rita had been sexually assaulted by someone at the beach and was threatened with death if she was ever to tell anyone. Rita's mom found out when she was giving her bath and discovered her bodysuit. She wore one of those because her skin is a bit sensitive to the sun, had a cut in the crotch area, big enough to reveal her privates, and there was blood all over it. She was immediately rushed to the hospital, where the suspicions were confirmed that she was indeed assaulted. Even her dad was made a suspect after talking to the police, but was released after his wife's testimony. He was furious. There was someone at that beach we go to for years that has been snatching and raping little girls. After he talked to the police, they said there was nothing they could do since there was no DNA or evidence. Apparently the sick used a condom, and that the best they could do was send out a patrol to the beach, but the presence of uniformed officers would scare away the rapist. Days had passed, and the behavior of Rita changed immensely, and she started avoiding me and any other boys in the neighborhood. She would get extremely scared around adults, even to the point of being herself and crying uncontrollably. I didn't understand what was happening, because during this whole ordeal I was completely oblivious to what happened to her. I only find out 20 years later. I knew something was wrong, since I had overheard both our moms crying over it, but I didn't know what it was. So, both our dads started plotting revenge, and to end that pervert's reign of terror. One night, as they were talking to each other about what they could do about it, Maria had sneaked out of her room and overheard everything. She approached them and said, Is this about the man that hurt Rita? I can help. They both stared at her and told her to go to bed and forget what she heard. Maria insisted and said that she wanted the man that hurt her sister to just disappear. The next weekend, the three of them went to the beach without the knowledge of the rest of us and started exacting their revenge. Maria acted as bait, and despite being 11, she was barely any taller than Rita, so she could pass as a 6 or 7-year-old as she played near the rocks. It was low tide. Both our dads watched from afar like hawks. Sure enough, 15 minutes later there was someone beckoning at her from behind the rock. As scared she was, she approached the person. Our dads saw this and ran towards her. What they saw sent shivers down their spines. In the short amount of time it took them to get there, Maria was already gagged and her bikini bottoms were down to her ankles, and the pervert was ready too. He had a knife in his hand, which both our dads promptly took from him. They said he tried to make some excuses about how he found her like that and she was going to help her, but those were literally his last words. Over the course of what they said felt like hours, but it was less than 5 minutes. They proceeded to beat the shit out of him, gagged him, stabbed him in his junk, bashed his head against the rocks over and over and over again until he was still. Then Rita's dad dealt with the last blow and stabbed him in the throat, leaving him there as he gurgled his last breath. They left the beach and Maria was shaking, having almost experienced an assault like her sister. She started sobbing and crying in the car, but her dad managed to calm her down and assured her that her sister had been avenged. She didn't understand what had happened, but she was calm when they got home. She was made to promise never to tell a soul, and this was their secret until now. 2 days later, the news of the body of a known sex offender that had been on the run was discovered next to a beach in Spain, and there were no suspects since he was badly decomposed. Apparently, the high tide came soon after and took him away, which was a blessing to our dads. Rita still has nightmares to this day, but has had the fortune of marrying a wonderful man that helps and supports her, and Maria carried this secret up to this day when she shared the story along with our dads. We were shocked and my mom was furious at my dad, because he could have been arrested and our family torn apart. Rita's mom started crying and begged her husband to tell her he was lying and that she couldn't believe her husband was a murderer. Maria intervened and said she was as much as of an accomplice as our dads. Rita was not present as she was in the hospital delivering her first baby, and we all agreed never to tell her anything. It doesn't feel right to ask if you enjoy this story, but share your opinions in the comment and support the writer with an upvote. Link is in the description.